Hi everyone, welcome back to other chapter of our podcast, Educative Voices. I'm Marlon Moreira. And Mariana. I'm Mariana, Naomi Marquez, and Alison Mendoza. Well, today we are going to talk about one of the most important topics in education. The topic is educational evaluation. Today we are going to talk, analyze, and reflect how evaluation is an essential part of the learning teaching process. So many people think that evaluation is only about exam grading or tests. So, however, educational evaluation is much more than that. It is a continuous process that helps teachers understand how students learn, identify problems or difficulties, and improve the teaching process. So evaluation also helps students recognize their strategies and weaknesses, so they can continue improving their weaknesses. So in this podcast, we will discuss very important topics such as the concept educational evaluation, the differences between evaluation, grading, and measurement, the characteristics between of the evaluation, and also the evaluation of conceptual, procedimental, and attitudinal concepts. To begin this conversation, I would like to ask an important question that will open today this discussion. The question is, do you think educational evaluation is only used to give grades, or does it have a deeper purpose in the learning process? That's a good question. Actually, assessment is much more than just grading. It's an ongoing reflective process that helps teachers understand how the students learn so they can allow to adjust their strategies and support the students through the entire journey. It is a way to see how students are doing uh, by their own. And so teachers can help them learn better. It's not a punishment. It's a tool to guide students through the whole process. And today, we don't just test memory, we also look at the skills and behavior. The main goal is to students learn and keep getting better every day. I think what you mentioned is very important because evaluation should be comprehensive. For a long time, most of people thought that assessment was just about difficult tests or final grades. But nowadays, it's more taken as a human way. And teachers can use projects, teamwork, class participation to evaluate their students. And this is an opportunity for the students to show what they know and what they can do, and not only through tests. And assessment also is not a thing that happens just at the end of the learning. It will happen also in before, during, and after the evaluation process, the learning process. Exactly. When the interesting things that evaluation is no longer seen isolate moment. So now it is considered a permanent part of learning. So now, speaking about common confusion, many people use words like evaluation, grading, or measurement as if they had the something meaning, but actually they are a different concept. So for that reason, let's continue with our topic. Next topic. This topic is fundamental because many think evaluating is only giving a grade. Measurement is about collecting quantitative data. For example, answering 8 out of 10 question correctly. Grading is a numerical or symbolic expression of that measurement, such as 8 of 10. Evaluation, however, is broad. It interprets information, reflects on it, and makes educational decisions.
decisions. If a student gets a low grade, a teacher has to analyze and see if the student have of lack of motivation, feminist issues, or even inadequate teaching strategies. And it's also the important to emphasize that a good evaluation process is not only focused on mistake. Evaluation must recognize breakthrough, achievement, and progress. And occasionally, a student may not achieve the expected grade, but may have demonstrated effort. And effort, participation, and improvement compared to previous evaluation, and all of these are part of evaluative process. Additionally, evaluation can include qualitative aspects like creativity, attitude, responsibility of the ability to work as a group. And therefore, reducing evaluation only the grade can be unfair and limit a true understanding of language, of learning. Another big difference is that grading just is just a technical task, while true assessment is more about care and teaching. The teachers have the responsibility of being fair, open-minded, and respectful, always keeping in mind the student's needs. Without a doubt, this difference helps us understand that evaluation is much more than a simple grade. So now, for evaluation to really effective, it must have certain characteristics and conditions that warrant quality and fairness. That is exactly what we are going to discuss in the next topic. Assessment also has some important characteristics. First, we have it has to be continuous, which means that the teacher that follow the student progress in the whole duration of the learning process. Second, it has to be comprehensive because it doesn't only evaluate the knowledge, but also evaluate the skill, the abilities, and the values. And third, it has to be flexible so it can adapt to every different needs and learning speed for each student. Objectivity is key. Teachers should use clear criteria, indicators, and rubrics. Validity is also essential. Evaluation must measure what is intended to measure. Reliability ensures consistent results. Well, there is also a relevant characteristic and is the participation. Currently, students are encouraged to participate in evaluation through self-evaluation and peer evaluation process. Yes, there are two. The first one, self-evaluation, allows the students to reflect on their own learning, identify strengths, and recognize areas for improvement. And peer evaluation, in other hands, involves students evaluating their classmates' work in a respectful and critical manner. And this practice helps to develop their responsibility, autonomy, and reflective thinking. It's also crucial for assessment of the context. This means that teachers have the responsibility to know the students' social, cultural, and emotional realities. Not every classroom is the same. There's much difference about family, money, technology that impacts directly to the learning. So to be truly fair, the teacher has to know the real life condition of the student. All of this shows that education and evaluation require planning, sensitivity, and pedagogical commitment. Inside this process, there are also different function and evaluation modalities that have specific purpose in education. So now let's move to our next topic. One of the most important functions of assessment is the diagnostic evaluation. This happens before starting a new topic. Its purpose is to know if the students already understand the topic, and what they need to improve. In this way, this helps to the teacher to organize better lessons. For example, before teaching a new math topic, the teacher can check if the students already understand the basic ideas first. Formative evaluation occurs during the learning. It provides feedback, guidance, and support. For example, reviewing a draft essay with final submission is a formative evaluation.
We also find the summative function. Summative evaluation is generally applied at the end of the educational process to verify the learning objectives were uh, achieved. It is generally associated with final exams, comprehensive project, or final grades. And it is often the most well-known method, and it shouldn't be the only way to evaluate. And additionally, there's a guiding function which help guide both the students and the teacher in decision making. There are three main ways to assess: teacher assessment, self assessment, and peer assessment. It can be done by the teacher, by the students looking at their own work, or by a classmate checking each other's progress. All these three approach was the teamwork and supports the critical thinking skills.
Then finally, each function and modality has an important and one their role in the educational process. So, however, evaluation is only applied in a general way. There are also specific forms of evaluation depending on the type of learning content. So, for this reason, now we are going to talk about the evaluation of the teaching and learning process. Evaluation must analyze both performance and teaching practice. Difficulties may stem from methodology, not just student ability. It is a two-way process evaluating students and teaching effectiveness. Teachers should reflect on their process to identify what works and what needs improvement. Additionally, evaluation learning process allows for the identification of progressive plans. And learning doesn't happen immediately, and each student has a different way to get knowledge. And therefore, evaluation should focus on process and not only on a final result or grade. And it is also to consider emotional and social aspects within learning, and a positive and motivating environment foster better educational outcomes. Today, schools prefer interactive methods like projects, portfolios, and debates. These methods shows what students can actually do during the process of building their creativity, uh, critical thinking, and problem solving skills. At this point, we have understood the importance of evaluation educational process. So, but now we are going to explain or explore how different types of contents or are evaluated. So, first, we will begin with conceptual contents. It's related to facts, definition, theories, and formulas. So when a teacher evaluates this kind of learning, the goal is not only the memorization. What really matters is that the student actually understand the topic and can explain it in their own words. Evaluation strategies include writing tests, concept maps, oral presentation, and essays. The goal is not to memorization, but it's analysis, application, and explanation in the real context. Another important strategy is to use reflective and reasoning question. An open-ended question make it possible to gauge the student's level of comprehension. And additionally, debates in group lectures help strengthen conceptual learning because students are compare ideas and collectively construct knowledge. It's important to remember that facts and theory are the foundations of learning. However,
Modern education shows that just knowing the theory isn't enough. Students also need practical skills and positive attitude.
Procedural contents are related to skills, techniques, ability, and procedures. That is to say, they refer to know how. For example, solving mathematical problem, conducting a scientific experiment, writing text, using technological tools, or developing a practical project are examples of procedural learning. The evaluation of this content must focus on the execution of practical application of knowledge.
Personal learning is learning by doing. Teachers can evaluate this kind of learning through projects, workshops, observations, simulations, and rubrics. In this case, the result is important, but also the process is very important. For example, in a science experiment, the teacher can observe while the student follow the steps, how they organize the material, and also how they can solve the problems. Rubrics are very useful because they clarify performance expectations. Procedural evaluations requires continuous observations and time invested.
Also, learning by doing makes the experience more meaningful. When students apply that they know during the real life tasks, they make him more dynamic and useful. That's why modern education focuses on hands-on activities and learning by the experience.
Without a doubt, developing skills and abilities in education process. But besides knowing and doing, there is another way, important decision, and attitudinal and values. So for that reason, we will talk about the evaluation of attitudinal process. Attitudinal learning focuses on values and behavior such as respect, responsibility, teamwork, empathy, and participation. This is important because education is not only about learning information, but also learning how to be a better person and how to live with others and work with other persons. Attitudinal evaluation is complex. It uses observation, analytical course, checklists, self-evaluation, and peer evaluations. Teachers must observe how students interact, participate, and show values inside and outside the class.
Uh, it's so important for attitudinal evaluation to be constant and contextualized because attitudes can vary depending on the environment, experience, and the personal situation of its students. And the teacher must act with sensitivity and objectivity. And additionally, a positive feedback is essential for strengthening appropriate behavior.
Today, we know that teaching values is essential for building a better society. This is why assessment values or attitudes is a key part of education. It is not enough to train smart students. We also need to raise critical and respectful and caring and ethical citizens.
Ok, después de todo lo que hemos hablado, llegamos a la conclusión de que comprender que la evaluación educativa es mucho más que poner notas o poner un simple examen. La evaluación constituye una herramienta fundamental para el proceso de aprendizaje o para mejorar la enseñanza de los estudiantes. También es importante acompañar el aprendizaje y favorecer el desarrollo integral de cada estudiante. A lo largo de este podcast, conocimos la conceptualización de la educación, la diferencia entre evaluación, calificación, medida. También descubrimos lo que son las características y circunstancias educativas, así también como los contenidos actitudinales, conceptuales y procedimentales. También comprendimos que evaluar implica reflexionar, orientar y tomar decisiones para y por el bienestar de los estudiantes. También tomar en cuenta que cuando nosotros realizamos este proceso, también tenemos que tomar en cuenta el proceso de nosotros como profesores, porque muchas veces podemos nosotros ser el error y no los estudiantes. Claro, además también aprendimos que la evaluación debe ser humana, tiene que ser inclusiva, formativa. El objetivo principal no debe ser castigar los errores, sino que ayudar al estudiante a que crezca y mejore. La evaluación educativa nos permite construir aprendizajes significativos y fortalecer el desarrollo integral del estudiante. Por ello, los docentes deben utilizar estrategias adaptadas a las diferentes necesidades de cada contexto.
Claro, también es importante recordar que todos aprendemos de forma diferente y ya aquí yace la importancia de la evaluación flexible, la cual puede incluir a todos los estudiantes sin importar sus capacidades. Y también una justa evaluación reconoce la diversidad y promueve la participación de todos los estudiantes para que tengan un esfuerzo y un progreso en conjunto.
Finalmente, podemos decir que evaluar no solamente medir conocimientos, sino comprender procesos humanos de aprendizaje. La evaluación debe convertirse en una oportunidad para aprender, reflexionar y mejorar continuamente.
Hemos llegado al final de este podcast. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos y en este podcast educativo sobre la evaluación educativa. Gracias también por permitirnos y esperando que este espacio haya sido útil para comprender sobre la evaluación educativa, las maneras de evaluar y las diferencias entre estas. Muchas gracias.
¡Yeah!